Yeah, oh 12, that was Candace. Calm with complexion, body like heaven, and she was a dancer. Capricorn or Aquarius, but she remind me of a Cancer. She called, I would answer. Late night phone session with the camera. She tryna make a movie on the plasma. She moving like a pro, no amateur. Sex, drive, got stamina. She would ask, could I handle her? Then I'm a damager. You in need of a manager.
Hey Rose Petals and Rose Fellows, it is Candace Rose, and today's video is another story time. Yeah, this is like my second story time. A little bit of a disclaimer. I hope this is like the last story time that I give y'all that is like of a bit of a downer. I'm going to try to give y'all some funny and some good and some juicy story times, but you know, this is just something that I need to get off my chest. When I tell a story time, I'm shooting straight from the hip. I'm not trying to gain any type of attention. I'm not trying to ruffle anybody's feathers, but if I do ruffle anybody's feathers, that's because they feel guilty of, you know, they feel guilty of the things that they did, and I'm making it public, even speaking about it. As you guys already know, almost a year to date, I had told my domestic violence story time about the time that I got shot. First and foremost, like, I still want to thank y'all for making that video go viral. I had no idea that me telling my story and telling and sharing my domestic violence experience, that it was going to gain so much traction like it did. It's still getting tons of views still to this day. I uploaded that video in October on the 24th of last year, so it's approaching its 1 or 2 year mark. With uploading videos like that, or just uploading videos as a whole on YouTube, especially when you are monetized or you're on your way or your road to be monetized, it comes with the good and the bad. And when I uploaded that video, it was a lot of trolls that trolled that video. I got a lot of positive feedback. I got a lot of people who told me, you know, to keep my head up, and told me their personal experiences concerning domestic violence. I just got positive feedback from it. Not only keeping my head up and telling me that they were so thankful that I'm still alive to even share that story. It really did help me further get over that situation. And I know that it also helped other women that were in a situation very similar to mine. In the same sense, I got a lot of negative feedback, and I can't even believe that it's people out there in the world that think the way that they think, and they exude those thoughts into somebody else's life and into somebody else's comments. And if I was a weak person, I would honestly let that get to me, and that will really hurt me. But I know it's just trolls. A lot of the negative comments that I got was, I deserve it because I kept going back. I was stupid. It was even one that said, it was one comment that I read, like, he should have killed you. I just never let that stuff get to me. If it wasn't for me getting to the root of the problem and like years of therapy, it was a reason why I kept going back. It was a reason why I tried to make that whole situation work. As the title said, that it started in my home. So as a child, I was physically, emotionally, and verbally abused by my mother's husband. But I just feel like what I went through piggybacked off of why I was in such an abusive relationship that relates to that story time. Some children have been abused more than others, more than I was, but for me to be such a little child, an innocent girl, and the reason why I was abused, I feel like it was unnecessary, it was uncalled for, and I was not even a bad kid to deserve the treatment that I got. Even if I was a bad kid, I didn't deserve to be physically, verbally, and emotionally abused the way that I was. This story time right here is very touchy, just for the people that are involved. Like, my family was involved, and it was my mother's husband. So I don't know if he would ever see this or ever watch this video. I personally don't give a fuck. They're not even together anymore. But even if they were still together, I was going to tell this story anyway. If it offends anybody, I'm sorry. I'm going to always live my truth. And this was something that I did not want to discuss at the time because I did not want to hurt anybody's feelings. But this is something that happened to me. Like, this ain't nobody's life. This ain't nobody's story to tell. This is my story to tell. And I'm going to tell it. Big bulk of the physical abuse came from when I was a small child. And when I was helpless, when I was defenseless, and when I felt like I did not have a voice, I was voiceless. So a lot of the abuse happened when I was a child. I did not know how to count money. I did not know how to count money when I was a kid. I don't know. I was in grade school, basically. I was in elementary school. I did not know how to count money. So I was sent home, some homework so I can count money. Now, I knew how to count big bills. That was it. When it came to change, I just didn't know how to count change. It was crazy. I did not know how to count change. So he was so-called helping me with my homework. And every single problem that I got wrong, he physically put his fucking hands on me. Like, it was one time where he asked me, well, how much is this? And I was afraid to answer. Like, at this point, I was afraid to answer. And he punched me in my ribs. Like, he just socked me in my ribs. This man was not a little string bean. He's 6'7", over 300 pounds or 300-ish pounds. But regardless of if he was big or small, he was still a grown-ass man. I was still a kid. You were still bigger than me. He asked me another problem, and I'm looking at the paper. I'm looking at the coins because it was like illustrations because, mind you, I'm a kid. So we were doing everything by pictures. So he was like, well, count on your fingers. So I started counting on my fingers, and I said the wrong answer. And he grabbed my hand, my little teeny tiny 5-year-old, 7, whatever how old adolescent's hand, and he said, does this look like 15 fucking fingers to you? And slammed my hand onto the table. Now, this was like a real solid wood table at the time. I'm just shocked. Like, I'm shocked. I wanted to cry. I didn't cry because I was so scared. Like, if I cry, he might beat my ass even more. So I just didn't. So I'm over here trying to get through the pain of my hand hurting, my finger hurting, and trying to just get this over with. So I finally got through that. I don't know how I survived like the homework from hell with this man, but I noticed that I cannot move my finger. It was my ring finger. And by this time, my mom had came home from work because he would do all the abuse when my mom was not there. And this is how I knew that he was wrong, because he wouldn't do that shit in front of my mother. He would do all this shit when she was at work. So she noticed, like, what is going on with your hand? And I'm like, my hand is hurting. Like, I just can't move my finger. So she took me to the hospital. So I'm in the exam room, and the doctor made my mom and her husband step out, and it was just me and the doctor. When he got me alone, he asked me, what really happened with your hand? And I told him, my dad, he accidentally slammed my hand into the table when we were doing homework. Now, if I was a doctor, I'm like, how do you accidentally do that? There's no way it's no way it could be an accident. And I also told my mom this as well. So my finger was not broken. I had my finger in a splint for a couple of weeks, and that was that. But I could not even believe that I was protecting him. I couldn't believe it. What's that syndrome called? It's called Stockholm syndrome, when you protect your abuser. And that's how I felt. Like, I felt like I didn't want to get him in trouble, so I just went on with this lie. There was another accident to where this was after my finger was in a splint and everything. Like, and I'm thinking, like, okay, well, that part is over. Maybe he will not put his fucking hands on me again. So there was another instance where I was outside playing with my neighborhood friend, and we just got on the subject of dads. And now her dad, she was like my best friend at the time. Her dad had full custody of her. She lived across the hallway from me because we lived in an apartment complex, and the dad had full custody of her. Now, my biological father was not in my life at all. I saw him one time as a small child that I can remember, and it was at like a freaking festival, a cookout or something like that, and I never saw him again. I just knew his name, and that was it. The balcony door was open to our apartment, and I guess he was listening in as we were talking about fathers. And I didn't say anything. I didn't even say anything about him at all. I just said my real dad's name, and I think I said something along the lines of I have two dads. Like, my biological dad's name is this, and then I have a stepdad, his name is this. And it wasn't even nothing bad to bash him or nothing. Like, it wasn't even after he almost ripped my fucking finger off of my hand, it was nothing bad. He calls me in the house like, yeah, Candace, it's time to come in, and this and the third. So I'm like, yeah, bye, girl. Like, I'll see you tomorrow, or I'll be back out. The moment that I walked through the door, this man attacked me. Like, he charged at me. That was his biggest thing, was smacking me in my fucking face. Like, he would smack me hard. Like, just imagine you being a little kid, and this 6'7", almost 300, like over 300 pound man comes and just imagine the hand size. So he smacked me so fucking hard in the face. He picked my little frail body up and threw me on the couch, like just like a wrestling move, like threw me on the couch. And I don't know if he tried to come down on me with his elbow, but I ended up rolling off the couch, and I just missed my sister, like, because she was sitting on the floor. And my instinct was like, I rolled off the couch and I started running, not even running to the front door. I ran to the room and I called my sister's name, and I'm like, help me, but she's a baby, you know what I mean? So he ended up getting me in the room, and he picked both of my legs up, like, say if you like changing a baby, he picked both of my legs up, and he's just hitting me on my ass so fucking hard, like hit me on my ass so fucking hard to the point I peed myself. Now, I wasn't the kid that peed on, I never wet the bed, I never peed on myself ever, like, as a kid. And he was hit, like, he beat the piss out of me, like physically beat the piss out of me. And he like walked out of the room and slammed the door, and then he like waited a few minutes, and he came back into the room. He was like, get dressed for bed, you going to bed. And the sun was still out, like, put on your pajamas and get in the bed. So that's exactly what I did. Like, I'm petrified at this point. So my mom comes home, she's like, why are you in bed so early? And I don't think I told her what happened. I was a mama's girl before he even came into the picture, and I was still a mama's girl when he was there, like when he was around. It was another instance, like all this stuff is starting to just generate back in my head. Another accident was, I was sleeping in the bed with my mom all the time. Like, it was a time where my mother had a 1-bedroom apartment, and I slept in the bed with my mom because she had a 1-bedroom apartment. So, and not only that, like I said, I was a mama's girl. I was always up under my mom. I just thought my mom was just like fucking everything. Like, I thought she was just so beautiful. She was so pretty. She always smelled good. Like, I remember, like, I can smell my mother right now, like to this day, like her perfume, like how she used to smell. He was out in the living room, and he used to stay up and watch TV all night. So he came into the room, and he saw that I was in the bed with my mom. My mom was knocked out asleep. He grabbed one of my arms, one of my legs, snatched me up, carried me into the bed, threw me down on the bed, smacked me right in the fucking face, and said, next time sleep in your own fucking bed. And from that day on, never slept with my mom again. Like, I never ever even sat on the bed. And that's what I had to go through. Last accident that happened, I was a teenager. Like, I was either a preteen or a teenager. I was either 12 or 13 when this last accident happened. And we were in church, and we were all going to church. Now, my grandmother, she owned her own church at this time. She was the pastor of the church at this time, and nobody knew about the abuse that was going on. Like, I didn't even tell my mom. You know how kids are, teenagers are. We laughing, we talking too much. You know, at this time, I don't know what happened to the point where he was like, I was in trouble. So he separated me from my cousins or whatever, because it's a family church. At my grandmother's church, it was an older church. It was like built like an old Southern church. So it had like the double doors. It was the main entrance. Then there was a hallway. Then there was a double door that led into the sanctuary. So, I think I got smart with him or something like that. So he told me to go to the back, like go in the back of the church, like go. He comes back there, and me and him exchange words. Now, mind you, my grandmother is in the pulpit preaching at this point. It's not a big church. It's a small church. It's not a teeny tiny church, but it was a nice enough size to where you can hear what was going on in the back. And me and him exchange words, and at this point he grabs me, like grabs the back of my shirt, and he's walking towards the exit. And I'm thinking to myself, like, if he gets me in this car, or if we get to this house, he's going to fuck me up. Now, at this point, like, I done already told y'all about the two big instances that I can remember that really impacted me. But even in between those two instances, he would put his hands on me. Like, he would smack me, he would intimidate me, he would get up in my face and things like that. So and this had been going on for years. So at this point, he's grabbing me and he's walking me to the door, and I ended up snatching away from him, and I'm like, I'm not going anywhere with you. That's what I screamed it super loud, and I'm crying and I'm screaming to the top of my lungs, like, I'm not going anywhere with you. And my grandmother is preaching. This little old lady, like, my grandma ain't tiny, but my grandmother and my grandfather, they run to the back after they hear this, and I don't know what happened, but my grandparents jumped in front of him, like jumped in between us, and made him leave, and I stayed. Then my mom eventually ended up coming back there. So after that was all said and done, church was over with. They trying to figure out and assess what happened. And I'm like, he grabbed me and yanked me up. Like, he yanked me up to the point where my feet was dangling from the floor. Like, that's how much he had me up in the air. So by the time we get to the house, me and my mom and my sister, he like, pack your shit and get the fuck out of my house. So I'm like, you ain't got to tell me twice. So I'm like, okay, well, whatever. So I'm packing up my stuff and I'm leaving. And then I noticed that my mom is packing her stuff up too. And she like, well, if he kick you out, then I'm leaving too. Like, so it was just like, but I mean, I kind of get that, but in the same sense, like, it's like, you ain't kicking my motherfucking kid out, girl. Get in the bed or do whatever it is that you do. You ain't going nowhere, and this is just, you leave. Like, you got a problem, you leave, you bounce. So I think it was safe to say that he knew that, okay, she's old enough now to recognize what the fuck is going on, and I can't manipulate the situation no more. And that's exactly what the fuck happened. Like, you cannot put your hands on me no more. We got into it again after that, and I basically told him, like, you put your motherfucking hands on me, you better sleep with one eye open. And I said it with such conviction in my voice, in my actions, and in my heart and soul that he stopped. And that's when the verbal abuse started. Fast forward to me just being an adult. My mother and her husband, they did end up moving in with me. And at this time, I was in another abusive relationship. He heard us fighting in the next room and he did nothing. He did nothing. He heard us physically fighting in the next room. He did absolutely nothing. But you know who did intervene? It was my mother. My mother was the one who intervened. And like I said, a lot of the abuse that I had to endure with my mother's husband, it never happened in front of her. Never. I think he did that on purpose because he knew that she was going to intervene. Like, I was a mama's girl before he even came into the picture. And I was still a mama's girl when he was there. The only time that I felt protected by him was the day that I got shot. And he basically threw my abuser's shot off when he ran from the bushes and started spraying my car. My mother's husband definitely threw his shot off by yelling at him and chasing him up the street. And that is one thing that I can't never take away from him, because if he did not throw his shot off, then it probably would have been worse than what it was. But that's the only thing that I'm ever going to give him credit on. That is it. He and my ex-boyfriend, we had got into it and we were not in the house, and it was in the car, and he put his hands on me to the point where I had to call the police. So when I called the police, like, I kicked him out of the car and I drove to the car. But by the time I got to the house, the police was already there. He walks in the door. My ex-boyfriend walks into the door, and my mother's husband is sitting on the couch, and the police asked him a question like, do you know what happened, or something like that. He said something along the lines of, well, she gonna stay with him anyway. I always hear them fighting, but she gonna stay with him anyway. Like, what type of fuck nigga shit is that? Like, you supposed to be my fucking hero. Like, you were supposed to pick up the place of my biological father, and you say some fuck shit like that, like, to the police, and you the reason why I fuck with toxic ass men anyway. It started from you. And you know, things like that really affects your self-esteem for a very, 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 very long time. I never thought that I was worth it. I never valued myself. I never held myself to a higher standard. When I was in those abusive relationships, I would always think like, this is what I deserve. This is what I get. Like, I deserve to be treated like this, especially when I was getting treated like this as a child. You know what I mean? So it just took a lot of therapy. It took a lot of experiences. It took a lot of growth within for me to become stronger. Like, no, Candace, like, you definitely don't deserve to be treated like this. And the moment that someone gives you signs of that, you up and leave. You don't have to put up with someone physically, emotionally, and verbally abusing you. Who are they? It took me a very long time, and I'm talking about it took me until I got into my 30s, and not even my early 30s, like a couple years ago. You don't have to put up with that. No. Cut it and move on. Like, after the breakup with me and my ex-fiance or whatever, like, my mother's husband was talking to like his brother or somebody like that, and was like, she can't keep no man. Instead of you calling me and asking me, am I okay? Because I really went through it in that situation. That was child, the man never put his motherfucking hands on me. But when I tell you emotionally damaged, oh Lord, I had to pick myself up out of that situation. I was already going through it, and I already wasn't fucking with my mother's husband in the first place. But to hear that, when that got back to me, oh, y'all should have seen the text message I sent. And I blocked him, and I ain't heard from him ever since then. I don't talk to him. I don't fuck with him. I don't see him, and it's for the greater good. This is what I'm talking about. You ain't shit. As if it was my fault that the breakup happened. When I was younger, I loved my sister and my mother so much that I didn't want him putting his hands on them. So I took a lot of abuse. Like, I did not want him touching my sister. I didn't want him putting his hands on my sister, but I didn't even have to worry about that anyway, because he definitely fucked with my sister harder than he fucked with me. Like, he ain't fucked with me at all. Now, it's not to say that he and we did not have good times, but I remember the bad times more than the good times. I find it extremely offensive and hurtful, the fact that me and her no longer have a relationship. It's like she woke up one day and was like, block, I don't want to talk to you no more. And I'm still trying to figure out to this day why she won't talk to me. Like, she won't talk to me. I have nieces and nephews that I don't even have a relationship with. Like, she just had a baby. She just had her first son. And I don't even know. I never even seen his face. Don't know how he looked. Never seen him, touched them, smelt them, picked them up in the air and put them back down. And never seen him. Now, my nieces, I could only count on one instant, like a few, maybe 3 times that I seen them. And she completely shut me out of her life. And as far as like my mom goes, like, I feel like the relationship between us is not as strong as it should be. I really do feel like at this point that her and I, like, we definitely need to seek counseling, just based off of the fact that, you know, my mom kept me very much so sheltered as a kid. Like, I was not allowed to go nowhere. Like, I wasn't allowed to go anywhere. And not only did you shelter me as a kid, I wasn't allowed to go anywhere, but you would leave me in the fucking house alone with this monster, and I was stuck with him. And her not knowing what the fuck was going on. Now, my mom is very nosy. She liked to pry in a lot of people's business, and she gets to the bottom of a lot of shit. But I felt like she kind of dropped the ball when it came to me and the abuse that I dealt with. And I finally did tell her, and her excuse was like, you know, I didn't know what was going on because he never left marks on you, and he didn't. The only time that he left marks on me was when my finger was in that splint. I had this conversation with my best friend too, because she was saying like she doesn't have like the strongest relationship with her mom too, and she hit the nail right on the head. Like, you know, I'm in my 30s, and you know, when you in your 30s, you and your mom, like, y'all should be best friends. Like, y'all should be going shopping together and spending a lot of time like shooting the shit, and you know, y'all should be best friends. And I'm like, oh my gosh, girl, like, you literally hit the nail on the head, because that's how I feel. I feel like I should have a better relationship with her, you know what I mean? And it's all in result of, like, I feel like I slipped through the cracks with her when it came to her husband, or her now ex-husband. I remember, you know, as I got older, and after all the abuse from not only him, but the abuse that I had with my ex-boyfriend shooting me and then turning back around and getting into another abusive relationship with another guy. I remember me and my mother's husband ended up getting into a argument, and I was like, well, I mean, I'm in these abusive relationships because your ass was abusive to me. And he was like, liar. Like, don't fucking sit up here and try to lie because she's sitting right here. Like, don't sit up here and try to lie. You did what you did, and now you embarrassed and you ashamed of it. Now you don't want to withhold that same energy. And I said something along the lines of, it's funny because little girls grow up to be grown women, and they remember everything that was fucking done to them. And that's when he busted out into tears and was like, I'm sorry, and this, that, and the third. And at that point, the damage was already done. I still even wasn't fucking with you. Like, it was already done. I'm already in my fucking 30s at this point, and I just ain't fucking with you. So it's like, you could take that sorry, you could shove it right up your ass, or like, I guess I forgive, like, for the sake of me, not for the sake of you. But it's just like, I don't fuck with you. Like, when I called you out on your bullshit while your wife was sitting right here, like, now you want to liar. Like, don't try to sit up here and try to lie. Because I can remember every fucking account that you did to me, and my story is never going to switch up. The proof was in the finger. Once I started going to therapy, I literally just told my close friends and my family what happened to me as a child. I just told them this, I want to say 2 years ago. I had been keeping this in for so long. When I told my friends, especially my friends, they was like, that's the reason why you keep dating men like that. And I remember like a family member of mine asking me, why didn't you say something years ago? Because if you would have said something years ago, then your mom would have been left. That ain't my fucking fault. Like, I was a fucking kid. Like, we not about to play the blame game. See, and that's why I went kind of like back into a shell. I'm pretty sure that this person didn't mean any malice or to hurt my feelings, but I took it as that. Like, you making it seem like it's my fault, and I ain't like that. I don't know how they feel about him. Like, my uncles don't know, but I told like my mom and like my aunts and my grandmother and my cousins, and it was like, I ain't never fucking like his ass to begin with anyway. All right, rose petals and rose fellows, so I hope that I brought some perspective into why I stayed into that toxic, abusive relationship that I was in when I told that story time. I hope it brought some perspective. I hope y'all understand why I stayed and why I stuck around. And that was the reason why I'm a much stronger person today than I was a few years ago. Even last year, for real. Like, I know what I deserve, and I know I don't deserve that. I feel like a lot of women should embed that and cement that and plant that in their mind as well. You deserve better. I deserve better. And no matter what you went through in your past, that does not define who you are today. And as the saying goes, like, I saw a meme on Facebook that said, bringing up my past is like robbing a house that is empty. I don't live there no more. And that's exactly how I feel. I'm content whether I'm single or if I'm dating somebody. I am very content. I used to be the girl that always felt incomplete unless I was in a relationship with someone. And that is a big reason why I always kept a boyfriend, and I put up with a lot of abuse because I was afraid to be alone and I felt incomplete without having a man. No matter if it was good, bad, or ugly. It's not okay to be in a relationship with someone who is abusing you of any kind. So I hope that brought some perspective to the reason why I stayed. And I hope that you ladies just continue to just be strong and continue to work on yourself and just love yourself. Well, yes, you guys, that is the end of my story time. Please like, comment, and subscribe. And I will see you guys in my next video.